In the ancient Greek world, the gymnasium was not merely a place for exercise. It was a sacred environment where the body, the mind, and the ideals of civilization were shaped together. To modern eyes, the practices that unfolded there can seem strange, even unhygienic. There were no showers, no soap, no rushing to rinse away sweat after exertion. Instead, Greek athletes embraced a ritual that transformed sweat itself into something valuable, something powerful, even holy. Before competition or training, athletes stripped themselves bare beneath the open sky of the gymnasium. Nudity was not scandalous here, it was expected. The naked body was a statement of discipline, balance, and divine proportion. Once unclothed, the athletes coated themselves in thick layers of olive oil, massaging it into their skin until it gleamed under the sun. This oil was not a casual luxury. Olive oil in Greece was sacred, associated with the goddess Athena herself, whose gift of the olive tree symbolized wisdom, endurance, and prosperity. To anoint the body with oil was to prepare it not only physically, but spiritually. As the athletes trained running, wrestling, throwing the discus or javelin, the oil mixed with sweat and dust from the earth. The body became slick and darkened, muscles outlined sharply as they flexed and strained. Far from being repulsed by this grime, the Greeks saw it as evidence of effort. Sweat was proof of discipline. Dirt was proof of contact with the land. Together, they marked a body that had been tested and refined through struggle. When the training or competition ended, the athletes did not seek water. Instead, they reached for a tool that was as iconic as the discus or the laurel crown, the strigil. This curved instrument, usually made of bronze, sometimes iron, fit perfectly into the hand. With slow, deliberate strokes, the athlete scraped the oil, sweat, and dirt from his skin. The process was methodical and almost ceremonial. Each pass of the strigil peeled away the residue of exertion, leaving the skin clean without a single drop of water. This scraped substance had a name: glowios. To modern sensibilities, glowios sounds repulsive, a greasy mixture of oil, sweat, and dust. But in ancient Greece, it was anything but waste. It was carefully collected by attendants, often young assistants who followed athletes during training and games. They gathered the glowios into small containers, treating it as a commodity rather than refuse. The belief surrounding glowios was deeply tied to the Greek understanding of the body and health. Athletes were admired not just for their strength, but for their perceived closeness to the divine. Victorious competitors were thought to possess a kind of excess vitality, a physical excellence that bordered on the supernatural. Their sweat, produced through disciplined exertion, was believed to contain traces of this power. As a result, glowios was sold to the public as a medicinal ointment. People rubbed it into aching joints, sore muscles, and stiff backs. It was applied to injuries, massaged into tired limbs, and even used as a preventative measure against pain. The sweat of a famous athlete, especially an Olympic victor, was considered particularly potent. To own such a substance was to possess a fragment of athletic excellence itself. This belief may seem irrational today, but it fit neatly into ancient medical theory. Greek medicine, influenced by thinkers like Hippocrates, emphasized balance, circulation, and the proper flow of bodily humors. Sweat was a visible sign that the body was expelling excess and maintaining equilibrium. When sweat came from a body trained to perfection, it was assumed to be especially pure and effective. The ritual of oiling and scraping also served practical purposes. Olive oil protected the skin from sun and wind, reduced friction during physical contact, and helped regulate body temperature. Scraping removed dead skin and grime without drying the body, preserving the skin's natural resilience. In an era without modern sanitation, these methods were surprisingly effective. Yet the significance of the ritual went far beyond hygiene. The gymnasium was a social and intellectual hub, a place where philosophers taught, politicians debated, and young men learned what it meant to be a citizen. The act of anointing and scraping the body was woven into this broader cultural fabric. It reinforced ideals of self-control, ritual order, and respect for tradition. In cities like Athens and Corinth, the gymnasium was a stage where the values of the polis were made visible. An athlete's body was not his own alone, it reflected his city, his lineage, and his gods. The careful preparation before competition and the precise cleansing afterward were expressions of discipline and reverence. Nothing about the process was rushed or careless. Even the collection and sale of gloyos had social meaning. It blurred the line between elite and ordinary citizens. While only a few could achieve athletic glory, many could participate indirectly by using the physical remnants of that excellence. The athlete's body became a source of benefit for the wider community, extending its influence beyond the stadium. There was also an element of hero worship at play. Famous athletes were celebrated in poetry, commemorated in statues, and remembered long after their deaths. Their physical presence carried weight, and their bodily substances were treated with a kind of reverence usually reserved for relics. In this way, gloyos occupied a strange space between medicine and magic, science and belief. Over time, these practices became deeply ingrained. To wash with soap and water immediately after exercise would have seemed improper, even wasteful. Water was certainly used in Greek life. Baths existed, and cleanliness mattered, but the sequence mattered. Scraping came first. Only after the oil and residue were removed might an athlete bathe, completing the ritual in the correct order. To modern observers, the idea of paying for someone else's scraped-off sweat is unsettling. Yet this reaction says more about modern assumptions than ancient ones. The Greeks did not view the body as something to be sterilized and hidden. They saw it as a dynamic system, constantly interacting with the environment and the divine. Sweat was not shameful. It was evidence of effort, discipline, and life itself. The practice of collecting gloyos eventually faded as medical understanding evolved and bathing practices changed. Soap, water systems, and new theories of hygiene reshaped how people thought about cleanliness and health. But the story remains a vivid reminder that concepts we take for granted are shaped by culture as much as biology. In the ancient Greek gymnasium, cleanliness was not about erasing the signs of exertion. It was about honoring them, transforming sweat into substance, and recognizing the body as both a physical tool and a sacred vessel. Through oil, bronze, and belief, the Greeks turned the aftermath of labor into something meaningful, something worth preserving, selling and trusting to heal. What remains striking is not the strangeness of the ritual, but its coherence. Every step from anointing the body to scraping the skin reflected a worldview in which effort, beauty, and health were inseparable. In that world, even sweat had value and even dirt told a story.